Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I got to the end of yesterday's show and I realized that I forgot to show you part of a video that I wanted to show you where we dug deeper into the person Monsef Salawi. And now he was the head of Operation Warp Speed, and it's important to dig a little bit deeper in his history to tie all this in together to understand the importance of why he was hired to basically fast track the vaccines. So we're going to play that now, and then in a second after that, we're going to get caught up on Between the Headlines. But before we do all that, I wanted to show you the building that we identified in iPetGo3 from yesterday. This is it here, and it is likely the Queen's Theater. Now, if you're a little bit lost, yesterday we looked at an animated film called iPetGo3, and there was a baby that was delivered by like a phoenix or a stork in a basket and landed on the top of a building that looked very similar to the one you're looking at right now. Here's the building in iPetGo3. There's the phoenix holding the baby. And then on the left is the Queen's Theater from Corona Park, Flushing Meadows. Now, iPetGo3 came out after everything that happened with the pandemic and all that. But this place is very interesting. Flushing Meadows, Corona Park. And this was established long before, worldwide pandemics. In fact, this particular place was the location of the World's Fair in 1939, in which they began to talk about polio and began to prepare the world for the polio pandemic and the resulting vaccine. This was one of the first places where this was recognized on a large scale. They had exhibits. They had this globe here, which Trump then duplicated and put in front of his international hotel, which is in his own words. And this is a very creepy place. This is where Men in Black was filmed. You'll recognize these buildings here. And you'll remember that Will Smith said that aliens lived among us in plain sight in Queens, which of course is where Trump is from as well. And what else happened here was a series of unexplained cattle mutilations. And the weird thing about these cattle mutilations, and you can look this up online, was that it happened at a zoo at this site, and the animals were locked in their cages, but still somehow were mutilated. Now, what makes this Queen's Theater a very dark place is it was one of the very first places where they held mass Smack the Nations. Right there, you could walk right in. This is it right here. Now, at a certain point, this was January 13th, 2021, Citi Field replaced Queen's Theater as the mass Smack the Nation site. But think of the implications of this. Now, I know these images aren't exact. There's got these horizontal lines here, horizontal rings stacked upon one another. It's not an exact match, and also this has an angle that kind of cuts out for this rectangular portion. This seems to somewhat duplicate it. This is not a straight edge here, so it seems to suggest that it is similar. And this was the case in iPetGo2 as well. iPetGo2 showed a lot of things that looked very similar, but not exact, right? So we can say that these two items look very similar. Not exact, but very similar. Now, what else is weird about this place is that The Wiz was filmed here. And many of you will remember that scene. This is where Dorothy came down through the portal and into the land of Oz. She fell right through this center ring. And when it broke off, it looked like a Q. And if you look very closely at this image, it almost looks like an inverted crown of thorns, which would not be much of a stretch because the New York State Pavilion observation towers and the New York State Pavilion, which is what this is here, the towers are in the back, was likely designed as a crown because this is Corona Park, right? So there's something a little bit weird going on here, isn't there? Now, what else is going on? Well, this also looks like a carousel, doesn't it? Looks a lot like a carousel, which of course creates a tune that hypnotizes the children, puts them to sleep as they're going around in a circle, which also reminds me of the carousel-like behavior of zombies that are controlled by electromagnetic frequencies in movies like Zelle. Marching zombies, marching in a circle, and like these animals that have been found marching in a circle under some kind of hypnotic effect. So I just wanted to catch you guys up on yesterday's show. Now we have lots of videos on Corona Park, Flushing Meadows, and the World's Fair. There's playlists. You can go on the channel and search. There's lots of research if you're into that kind of thing. I think there's something here. It's really weird. And it's something that definitely needs to be dug into further with the whole Tomorrowland and time travel and all this other stuff that we've been looking at. Let me go into the chat for a bit, and then we're going to get into the headlines. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Bill says, Logan's Run. Yes, the carousel. Many people remember the science fiction film Logan's Run. And what the carousel did is it represented life, death, and renewal. And when the people of the world of Logan's Run would get to a certain age, I think it was in their 20s or 30s, they would be sacrificed at the carousel. And they would go around in a circle and they would just get annihilated by a beam or something. I can't remember exactly. And then at some point, a couple of the people decide that they do not want to share the same fate. And they escape outside of the firmament of the Logan's Run world. They were told that they were put in this firmament to protect him from an apocalypse that happened. Thanks, Mac TV. Much appreciated. And so they basically escape, and that's why it's called Logan's Run, because Logan and his girlfriend and a couple other people, and then some guy's like chasing them. He's the guy that's still brainwashed, and that's what's going to happen. God's people are going to be chased as we get closer and closer to the end times, closer and closer to the narrow gate outside of this firmament. Right? And yes, it was Logan and Jessica. It's actually a really good film. I think I decoded that at some point. I don't know if it's up here on the channel. But anyway, they make it through the firmament. And interestingly, as they approach the edge of the firmament, what do they find, you guys, that would reinforce the enclosed model? What did they have to go through to get outside? What was one of the last barriers? Let's see who gets it. Sorry, my allergies are kicking up today. I was trying to get a garage project done. Somebody asked how the Honey Milk Ranch is doing. Well, I've been at it, you guys. I replaced the carburetor. Gosh, you can get a carburetor for like $15 on Amazon for a riding lawnmower. And I didn't believe it, but then I got it. I put it in, and my lawnmower runs amazing now. So I did a carburetor install yesterday. It took me about an hour. I'm trying to figure things out instead of hiring people to do it. I'm trying to do a better job because at some point, you're going to need to know how to do all this stuff, right? Everything. Because you're not going to be able to call somebody up to help you. So I did that yesterday. And then I had to rearrange the garage doors in my garage and clean up. And then the shelf fell over, so this is what I was doing this morning. And then the dust was kicking up because I had the blower, and so I'm got a little bit of allergies here, but I'm okay. So someone said the frozen. Yes, that was one of the last barriers in Logan's Run, was the frozen tunnels and there was some weird robot that was chasing them. I'm just going off my memory. But that would symbolize the outer ring, the Antarctic ring around the whole thing, the ice wall. And there actually is a huge ice shelf in Antarctica. And they say it's one of the largest shelves in the entire world, which would make sense. I don't know how high it comes up out of the water, but there's a reason why they don't want people cruising around down there and exploring, other than the fact that it's super cold. Anyway, that's Logan's Run, so thanks for bringing that up. Fun to talk about some of this stuff. Now, let's get between the headlines. Now, there's been... Oh, first of all, let's see. Hold on. We got to catch up on this first. Let's play this. Bonsef Salawi, this is him. This is the spelling of his name. He's got a Wikipedia page. He's from Morocco, Arabic. Born July 22nd, 59. Let's take a look at what we had to say in this video from a couple years ago. So this is Monsef Slawi, we're going to call him. And I call him the money man. Why? Because this is the guy that Trump hired to head up Warp Speed to fast track the VC. And we expose this guy. He's into New Age, into Eastern medicine. He's into all these things to try to basically bring about a bioelectronic future in which they implant us with chips and nanotechnology that wrap around your vagus nerve like a serpent and tap in to your life force. Literally, the device that he was working on to tap into the vagus nerve looks like a bunch of wires wrapped around your vagus nerve, like the serpent wrapped around the pole. The life force that God gave you, the serpent wants to coil around it with this device. This is all in his own words. Well, not the part about the serpent, but he's like, we just want to wrap something around your vagus nerve. That sounds a lot like a snake to me. And this is the guy that Trump hired to head up Warp Speed. And we exposed this guy because we figured that he probably was the one who put this in the symbol, this Reiki energy chakra opening symbol here. This is what it is. We exposed it. And it contains both male and female, because both, this is the Antakarana symbol, it's called, and it's covering the Health and Human Resources symbol, but it's only masking the faces of the Health and Human Resources symbol. This is our mask. And the Antakarana is differentiated male from female only by these lines here. The thinner lines represent the female, and the thicker line represents the male. So it's combining the two, which is a little bit freaky to me. And we also found that this has Buddhist and Hindu roots. So that's what this is all about. We figured this probably was snuck in there by the Slew Man. Now, why do I call him the Slew Man? Well, I live in the Delta of California right now. Now, obviously, this was from some time ago because I'm not living there now. And we have a lot of what are called sloughs. That's the swamp. Literally the swamp. I thought we were supposed to be draining the swamp. Now, Slewy, we're going to call him, because a slough is a swamp, is actually going to be held over from the Trump administration over into Biden so that he can administer the bite. Now, Biden kept him on for like a year, I believe, and then Biden basically let him go, or this guy let himself go at that point. I think it just got too obvious. For those that don't know, the word sump means swamp as well. Sump. This is where you get the word sump pump. S-U-M-P. Let's keep listening here. And this whole Biden thing, gosh, his last name was so loaded. Biden. So this was the Biden psyop, right? Biden. And look at everyone's like, bye. And then here we are, Biden. Now, all these people are working together. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to understand. Now, what else is going on? On to the next story. Well, this is pretty huge, and this one went right over my head. It was one of you that pointed this out. And I was like, whoa, I love you guys. You guys are amazing. Now, this is a real billboard from 1939. This is the Trump family. It's documented only one place on the internet, and I suspect that they will probably take this down after it's been exposed. It's one of those glitches in the matrix that got through the cracks. The Queen's Chronicle is the one who covered this. It's the only source on the entire internet. You cannot find this billboard anywhere. This billboard actually existed at the 1939 World's Fair, which was seated dead center in the Queens County, Flushing Meadows, Corona of New York, right next to Jamaica Estates, where the Trump family grew up. And here it is. And one of you figured this out. You're like, Casey, that's an RX in his name. And I'm like, it sure is. That's an RX symbol, which means prescription. Now, what could this possibly mean? Well, this needle right here was called the Trilon. And of course, there are Trilon hypo needles. There's actually a brand of hypo needles called Trilon, which is the exact name of that monument that we just looked at. Here it is right here. This was patented on 1966. What the heck is going on here, right? So, what is this all about? Well, this is about some secret. Now, this was a billboard about the homes of tomorrow. And of course, they wanted to dovetail this in with the World's Fair of 1939. It was all about the future. 6,000 people live in Trump homes, it says. And we talked about how the steps look like the seat of Satan, the Pergamon. Now, these are prescription drugstores.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Satan, the Pergamon.
Wait a minute. 6,000 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoa. Whoa. 6,000 people. 6 trees on this side. And 6 trees on that side. 6, 6, 6. Let me count that again so we're sure. I don't want to mess this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. There you go, right there. Wait. 1. Oh, there's another tree over here. Hold on. Back up. 1, 2, 3. See this other tree here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7. Wait. Why is this not even? Hold on, let's count it. Oh, there's a tree right here too. Okay. So it looks like 7 on each side, which is the 77. And then you have this 6 here. So no 666. Sorry for the false alarm, you guys. Let's see if we can back this up and get the full image of this so we don't mess this up. There we go. There's the wide view. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, there's a little tree right there. See that little tree? That's where I was getting messed up. It's just the resolution's pretty bad. So there's 7 on each side, which is like 77. All right, let's keep going with this. Well, prescription. Now, these are prescription drugstores of the era. In the 1930s, I wanted to show you this. I always get naysayers, so I got to be very thorough on this channel. Casey, that symbol didn't exist in the 1930s. You're making all this up. No, it did. Here's one such drugstore, and there you see the RX. Now, here's the creepy thing about the RX. This is right out of the History Channel's stories. This is the history of the RX. Where did the RX symbol come from? So zooming in here. Commonly seen on doctor prescription pads and signs in pharmacies, RX is a symbol of medical prescription. According to most sources, RX is derived from the Latin word for recipe, meaning take. Among several alternative theories, however, is the belief that the RX symbol evolved from the Eye of Horus.
So, the prescription symbol came from the Eye of Horus,
an ancient Egyptian symbol associated with healing powers. Do you see how this goes opposite to the healing power of the Son of God? And there's no faith in God with this. It's a magical power done with pharmakia. What is known for certain is that the practice of pharmacy, the preparation and dispensation of drugs, has been around for thousands of years. So, there you go. Now, what do I have here? I want to do an update on this mural.
So I'll link this show from a couple of years ago. Let's see when this show, when did I do that? 2 years ago. So I'll link that in case you guys want to look at the murals from the World's Fair of 1939. These are a couple murals that were there, and we decoded that. So I will link that in the pinned comment when the show's over. Let me check in with you guys, see what's up, and then we'll get into some of these headlines. There's been another casualty of the Bud Light effect. Kohl's is now on the chopping block. Now, a couple of you came up with a really interesting theory about all this, and I tend to agree with you. Your thoughts are that they're using division, right? Because this is a fierce debate, or at least they want us to think it's a fierce debate. Really, it's a very small group of people against a much larger group of people that want to protect their children and what the future world's going to look like. That's what's going on here. But they want us to believe that this is cultural change that is inevitable and we have to accept it, right? But your theory is that they are using this division to devalue these companies so that they can be purchased again at a much lower price, consolidated under other brands. And I think you may be onto something, because at some point, like we talked about, there won't be a choice of what products to buy because they're all going to come from the same place. And what better way to mind control people than to only offer them one jar of peanut butter, for instance. And you're going to try to vote with your words and your actions and your buying habits, but it's not going to make any difference anymore unless you want to just stop eating peanut butter. Does that make sense? So they're weaponizing this controversy, this division, to benefit the controllers. Now, I would not disagree with that. I think that's a really good assessment of what could be going on with this. Let's read about what's going on with Kohl's. Now, it's interesting because, think about this, some of the names of these companies that are coming under the Bud Light effect, it's got some double meaning, doesn't it? Target became a Target, and Bud Light with the Clydesdales who were emasculated, right? So what could Kohl's double as before we get into reading the story? What do you think Kohl's could double as? What's the double meaning behind that? Let's see who gets it first. All right. Good morning, everybody. Corporate takeover, yes. Coercing, that's possible. There are no wrong answers here. I'm just seeing it. Kohl's, says Stacy. Kohl's coils, yes, that's possible. The word that came to mind for me was CULL. The culling, which means to discard and refine something in nature. Like when you cull, deer or something, or a crowd, a herd or something. You cull humanity. That's what it kind of reminded me of. Cull, cull. Anyway, let's read this story. Culture war continues to incite anti-LGBT mobs to attack major brands and retailers. That's not what this is. These aren't anti-LGBTQ mobs. Oh, just because you vote with your dollar, you become an anti-LGBTQ mob? That just automatically qualifies you for that? Because maybe, you don't want to live in a reality where everywhere you go, something is overrepresented in your reality? I mean, this is crazy. They call it an attack of major brands and retailers. The latest victim is Kohl's. Boycott Kohl's trends on Twitter on the morning of May 29th as consumers found the retailer selling Pride clothing. One of the biggest drivers of the outrage was Pride merchandise, targeted for infants. Right? I mean, you can't make this up. This is like jumbo shrimp. An infant doesn't know what they are yet because they haven't even had a chance to go through puberty. Why would you make merchandise for infants? Including a onesie that showed people of color holding up a pride flag. And this just burns me up. That they combine these two issues together. Color and pride. Like the two are not even close to being the same. The only thing they have in common, and I would even argue that that's not even the case, but they like to call people of color a minority group, when in actuality, I think that America is pretty mixed up with everything. Even people that are white are mixed with Cherokee and German and Irish and all the other things. They're just called white. Why do you think they do that? To create division. They categorize people in certain races so that they can say, look, this race is getting shafted and this other race has control, and then they have us all fighting with each other while the controllers at the top have their way with us, right? So that's what's going on. Now, I don't know what's going to come of all this, but you can see they're weaponizing this to shed a false light on people who just simply want to, when they go to Kohl's, buy a shirt. They don't want a whole political agenda kind of forced on them when they're walking through the aisles with their children. That's the closest that I could surmise. It has nothing to do with hating anybody. I love everybody. I don't care. I mean, if you're under some kind of demonic influence, and I'm going to probably stay away from you, but the Bible still instructs me to love you, right? So, wow. Now, the Bud Light marketing manipulation doesn't stop at companies who push agendas. Look at old Arnie, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I used to respect this guy when I was fast asleep, watched all his action films. I was like, wow, that is really cool. But this guy seems to never stop putting his foot in his mouth these days. So here's the latest on Mr. Screw Your Freedoms, which he said at some point during the pandemic. Now he says, hey, if they want to trick people into believing in climate change, then they just have to rephrase the argument and call it pollution. Are you kidding me? That's like tricking a child into eating their green beans by calling them green licorice or something, right? You can't make this up. Let's read this. Old Arnie Schwarzenegger says he wants to rephrase climate change. No one gives an S about that. Arnold wants a rebrand on climate change, arguing that reframing the climate crisis towards pollution might make a stronger draw for the people to mobilize for the planet. I mean, these people must think we're in third grade, right? With this kind of... But you know what? People fall for this. They see in plain sight that how they're being manipulated with this stuff, with branding and marketing, and they just accept it. Let's read it about what he says here. As long as they keep talking about global climate change, They're not going to want to go anywhere because no one gives an S about that. So my thing is, let's go and rephrase this and communicate differently about it and really tell people we're talking about pollution. Pollution creates climate change and pollution kills. There's a big difference between what they're talking about and real pollution, okay? For instance, the PCBs I was telling you about and the Superfund sites all across America, where large companies like Monsanto, who told us something was safe, and our government believed them and let them do it, dumped millions of tons of PCBs into plants across America and into rivers. Well, the plants used the PCBs in different products, and then that got dumped into rivers, which now are called Superfund sites because it's going to cost so much money to clean them up. They have to actually go in and dredge, pull up the sediment, and incinerate millions of tons of sediment. They're trucking this stuff off away from these sites. A lot of those are ending up in Detroit. And I know that because I just researched the Housatonic River. Little did I know, I'm catching fish out of this river when I was in Connecticut, and it's freaking polluted with PCBs. Now, it was way upstream, but they said it was millions of tons of this stuff. And upstream above the dams, they're talking about, I think it has now turned into a Superfund site, and they're talking about dredging, but I think it's Monsanto or GE is saying, oh, we just want to create a landfill and bury the stuff in a landfill next to the river, as if that's going to fix the problem. Or they're going to truck it off to Detroit, or they're going to truck some of it off to Detroit, but the rest of it they want to put in a landfill. It's unbelievable. This is America we're living in, and we're having these discussions. And so these PCBs are horrific. What they do to people. They cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, different kinds of cancers. And this was something that we were told in the 60s and 70s, I think all the way back to the 50s, this stuff was going on. We were told it was safe. And what is PCBs used for? PCBs were used mostly inside of, ready for this? Electric transformers. And you know what? If you have a transformer on a telephone pole next to your house that is from the 1970s, it was put in before the 1970s, it is full of this oil that is PCB based. Why don't we ever hear discussions about when a natural disaster happens, like a tornado or a hurricane, destroying these transformers, spilling the PCBs out into the streets, sewers, the water table, the rivers? Why don't we ever hear anyone ever talking about that? Now, how do I know that these are still in the transformers? Because the law that was written in the 1970s said that the cost to replace all these transformers would be too great, and that they would just only replace them when needed or when it was time to upgrade that particular transformer. Then they would put in the non-PCB transformer. So there's a very specific process to replace these transformers, and it deals a lot with pollutants and stuff. So they have to make sure that it's contained. Now, interestingly, my mother worked for the state of California. One of her last jobs was she was dealing with pollutants. In her case, it was these underground fuel storage tanks at gas stations. And apparently, many of them began to leak. So my mother was tasked with heading up some of these projects in her particular area for Caltrans. That was my mom's last job when she worked for the state of California. I'm very proud of my mother. She did all this on an associate's degree, and as a woman and a single mom. So, now she's retired, of course, But there are pollutants all around us that nobody's talking about. They got us looking in the sky, and yes, the chemtrails are bad, but guess what? The chemtrails fall on the wicked too. So either they have some kind of protection, or maybe we should be looking down in the dirt too and seeing what they're doing all around us. Now, here comes my pet squirrels. Gosh, they must hear me talking or something. They're out there just going to town on my grass seed. Oh boy. Anyway, I'll let them have their way. We're most of the way through the show, and I'll go out there and scare them off. Anyway, what else is going on? I'm getting off track here. All right, London says, I'm going to be showing some of your clips this Friday on my stream. Feel free to join. Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone can always use anything from this channel. A lot of channels do already. So that's great. Spread the word. That's great. Okay, so what else was I saying here? Okay, so these PCBs are everywhere. They're all around us right now as we speak. And look, hey, it's completely okay for you to call up your power company and ask them for a map of pre-1970s transformers in your area. That way you'll know where to stay away from. You'll also know that if a natural disaster occurs, you'll know which ones were damaged. So you can stay away from there, or consider that whatever water source that you have, wherever you get your water from, whether it be a well or city water, you'll know if it's possibly been affected if you see a destroyed transformer that you've already identified that might leak into the water table. So these are just different things. God says, my people are perish because of lack of knowledge. So we're supposed to be aware and awake. That's how we don't perish. You have to be digging into some of this stuff. And I'm not talking about fear-mongering. I'm talking about just basic knowledge of your surroundings. I had a really great conversation with Rose yesterday. She's awesome. Her and her husband are just great people. And she's just a really smart person. She's knowledgeable about nature, her surroundings. We share advice. And I'm just blessed to have friends like that are close by. And I've got to go pick up some manure from her. They've got piles and piles of manure from the goats and all this. And I just need to get this trailer cleaned out so I can go over there and pick some of that up. And that would just be amazing. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be sharing things with one another. That's how we get through this life, is sharing. Sharing information, sharing resources in these things. Making plans for the future in case something happens. So, that's what's going on with pollutants in these PCBs. Now let's get back to the story. I got off track here. So, that's why we were talking about that, because Arnold Schwarzenegger says we need to call climate change pollution. Well, just ignore all the real pollution out there. Let's not talk about that. Let's not bring that to the forefront with this guy's popularity. Let's just, switch gears here and call climate change pollution. Okay? So, Screw Your Freedoms now has more, opinions about this. Wow. Now, at the end of the show, we're going to get into something that happened in Russia. Things have escalated. Civilians have been hit. Nobody died yet. But Moscow has been attacked by drones. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But let's get into some of these other stories. Now, the controllers have a bit of a problem with how they're going to get Trump back in office. Because make no mistake, this is likely going to happen. In order to do this, they have to try and bill him as the underdog. And this is what they've been doing for the past several years. It started right after the crapper hole, and they said it was curtains for Trump and the family. They're going to lose all their sponsors and lose all their popularity and all their money. They're going to be poor and destitute. No one's going to work with them anymore. And exactly the opposite happened. He's richer than ever. A lot of people still deceived. Now, how does this happen? Well, It's because he's being opposed. They're intentionally creating this opposition narrative by the left to fear people into clamping on to Trump, to fear people into accepting Trump as the underdog, to give him credibility, right? Now, here's the thing. They're riding a fine line here because they also, in order for him to get reelected, he has to become the nominee, doesn't he? Do you see the problem here? You can't have an underdog nominee. It doesn't work. It can't work that way because no Republican in their right mind would choose Trump to run. They would be trying to develop other people to run, right? Or DeSantis would be leading. But they've lied to us and they tell us that Trump is leading, right, in the polls, which I don't believe is the case. Or it could be. You know, people are like, yeah, poor Trump. He's got indicted and impeached and this and that. That's all part of the programming, you guys, to make you choose him. So they're saying that this guy says ex-Trump official makes stark prediction about Trump 2024. Let's read this. They dance around this dilemma they're in. Mick Mulvaney thinks Donald Trump will be the GOP nominee in the 2024 presidential election. Yes, he has to be in order to win, right? But in an interview with Sky News Australia on Tuesday, the one-time acting chief of staff in Trump's White House predicted Trump will lose in the general election. No, he won't lose. Republicans' primary will be about Donald Trump, and he will probably win. And the general election will be about Donald Trump, and he will probably lose. Mulvaney described Trump as a turnout machine, noting he drives people to vote both for and against him. The race will be about him. Do you love him or do you hate him? So, see how they're wiggling around here? None of this is real. Now, let's get into immigration. Because Trump says that he will end birthright citizenship first day in office. Sounds great, right? But hear me out. Why not first start with getting rid of benefits to illegals? An executive order across all states to end sanctuary cities and to cut off all benefits unless you're an American citizen. What that would do is it would send most illegals home, and then we could, as a country, help tackle the corruption in Mexico with how we trade with Mexico that is keeping its citizens poor and keeping them wanting to come to America. You guys, there was a time in history, not too long ago, where Mexican people did not want to come to America. They were fine where they were at. And then Mexico became very corrupt. I believe Mexico is our puppet. I believe we allow the corruption and encourage it on purpose so that we could have a trade agreement. And the leaders of Mexico have sold their people out, and this is why they stay poor, and this is why they keep wanting to come here. Now, my plan would be to set a date. And this is what I would say if I was Trump running for president. I would say, look, first day in office, we're going to set a date. We're going to set a timeline. It's going to give the people who are already here some time to figure out how they're going to get back to Mexico or how they're going to stop coming. I would give it like a year so that nobody is surprised or left in the dust. And in fact, I would even set aside some money to bring people back to the border to cross back over. Well, now, why would you do that? Well, because it's a small price to pay for our cities and our resources being run thin and people taking advantage of the system and everything else that comes along with illegal immigration. Once you put those things in place, guess what happens? The flow of illegals coming over would be stopped in its tracks. because there's nothing for them to come here for. But you have to do an executive order to force the states. How can you force the states? It's national security. If it hasn't been clear by now, they're saying Chinese men of fighting age are coming across the border. Of course, the financial burden on our system, these are all national security issues. You could do it in your sleep. You could do it easily. No state's going to fight you back. They might hate you, but they have no legal standing to stand on. I would also make it a felony to hire a person that does not have any documentation or citizenship. So employers would now get in trouble. They would face large fines. And then, guess what? We could start all over again and enforce legal immigration, right? Which would bring in far less people, and it would be based on their merit. Would be based on their desire to learn English and their ability to work, just like all other countries. I remember at one time in my life, I thought about expatriating to somewhere like Australia, and then I found out that Australia won't accept you unless you bring either a certain amount of money that you make every month or some kind of skill that they need, like nurses. So why do they get away with doing that and they don't get shamed? They don't get told that they don't care about illegals and that, oh, you horrible country, you won't accept people. They don't get that lecture. Why do we get that lecture? And why does Trump feel like he has to go from 0 to 100 with this issue? What does he think that a message like this, denying a child citizenship, what is that going to do? How is that going to make people feel compared to what I just explained to you about my plan to stop immigration? Now, you notice in my plan, I didn't even bring up a wall, did I? Because you don't need a wall. I mean, at some point you can build a wall, but you don't need to even go there yet. Because people are not going to walk across the desert, pay people $6,000 to do it, knowing that no one's going to hire them, otherwise they'd face a fine, and knowing they're not going to be able to drive and not be able to find food and a place to live. No one's going to do that, okay? So you see, this is an issue that they're not solving on purpose. They're using it as a political football to manipulate your emotions and your mind. Now, at some point, we should end birthright citizenship. But all those other things that I just mentioned need to happen first. So that when we finally do end the birthright citizenship rule, there won't be any births to deny citizenship to, will there? Because the problem will have already been taken care of. There might be a handful here and there that happened by accident, but it's not even going to be an issue anymore because there won't be anything. They don't want to solve this issue, you guys. This is what I'm trying to get you to understand. They don't want to ever solve this issue completely because every single president could have solved the issue a long time ago. There are reasons why they want illegals here. Some of those reasons are our trade agreements. Some of it is that we get cheaper produce, and there are entire industries based on this stuff. And there are many, many reasons why they'll never end this, but they're going to tell you they're going to end it. And Trump will hire his friends to build a wall so they can make billions of dollars that he's probably getting a kickback from somehow, some way. I mean, this is how rich people work, especially rich people in power. They probably invest in the very companies that he hired to build the wall. Their stock goes up. He makes money. That's how rich people make money. Okay. Now, let's get into this last part about this drone strike in Russia. Now, things have escalated significantly. Literally a strike. 8 drones hit Moscow civilian area, these apartment buildings. There's nothing around here that's military whatsoever. Russia allegedly shot them down. How did they do it? Listen to this. I mean, this sounds like a sci-fi movie.
Some of which remain undetonated. A lot of speculation online about the size and scale of the attack.
Now, I got to be careful here because this is ODYSEE, and this news outlet, which YouTube has pretty much kicked off the platform.
Just to be expected. But as of now, 8 drones, 3 disabled by electronic means, causing
Disabled by electronic means.
them to essentially drop out of the sky.
Causing them to drop out of the sky. So, what is this technology they're talking about? This is like a science fiction movie. This reminds me of those cartoons, those Saturday morning cartoons. You're watching the superheroes battle it out, and then somebody sends a ray, and then and then all the military equipment just stops working, like an EMP or something.
And 5 destroyed, we believe, by the Panzer S anti-aircraft system with missiles and gunfire, which will...
Gunfire. Okay, let's go back into the chat here. So, we have a troll. Nation is trolling. Thanks, Cindy. Let's take a look. What's the nation doing? Probably a Trump lover. Doesn't understand the right-left paradigm. Let's see what's going on here. Nation. I don't see nation. Nation. Let's see what he has to say. I don't like to just block people just to block people. But sometimes I have to. We have clear rules for the chat. If people break the rules, then they get enjoy the flock of demons, Casey. I'm done. Okay, so name calling is not allowed. And take care. If you don't want to be here, then I'll help you not be here. All right. I don't know why they call people on our channel a flock of demons. Jeez. Okay, so let's go into the chat here. Gund. Okay, thank you. All right, we took care of it. Thank you. Yeah, just ignore. So what do you guys think about all this? Let's open this up for discussion and see what's going on here. I live 15 minutes from the Mexico border. The sector has been about the same activity as usual, maybe a little more, but not much. All right. Thanks for that intel. Yeah, you guys are the most amazing group of people I've ever met. I mean, this channel pretty much has been all of your input for the last, I would say, 6 years or so. Once the channel got to a big enough size where you guys send me stuff, and that's what I present back. We try to be patient with people. We try to love one another, but sometimes people just, like a demon comes out in them, you know, and they just feel like they have to attack people. That's just not allowed here. It's just not. All right. Because they're busing and flying them over, says Anonymous. Shipping them to all the cities that they plan on bombing. Sounds like UFO stuff. Yeah, James. Yeah, great point. It's like the whole beam that disables the drones, and like an EMP. Now maybe that is a little bit of a clue, because, you know, there's this big fear that China and Russia have this weapon that they're going to cause huge blackouts. And, you know, if that happens here in America, that's the first place they're going to blame. That's the first countries they're going to blame, even though it could be our own government doing it. This is why they want us all on the grid, because then they can turn off parts of the grid and then just blame the other side, right? So that could be what this is about. Yeah, I don't really have any more updates on the Honey Milk Ranch. I did see Titus the tortoise. I call him Titus because that helps me remember he's a tortoise and not a turtle. He actually is a little tortoise. And he was cruising around out on the grass. I walked out one morning. I ran in to get my camera. And 30 seconds later, I came back. And he went from the middle of the lawn to wherever. He just disappeared. He like supernaturally disappeared. I was like, oh boy. Where did he go? I looked all around for him for like an hour because I couldn't believe he just disappeared. So Titus is around. He's really cool. Just cool to look at. So I don't know. Maybe he's eating the grass. Maybe they like the grass. I don't know. All right. Now, if Christian Nation wants to email me and maybe explain further as to what's going on, why there was a disagreement in the chat, you're more than welcome to do that. I can reinstate you. If it was done in error, I don't like to do that ever, but it does bug me that when we're trying to do a show and then I come back into the chat and there's drama, I just need to take care of it. I don't want to like try to figure it out live on the air, right? So if it was done in error, just email me. My email's in the front of my channel, and maybe we can get you reinstated, or maybe you just want to vent some more. But anyway. All right. Yes, it's very distracting. Sometimes I think some people do it intentionally just to get some attention. So what do you guys think about my immigration plan? Let's get your opinion on that. Do you think that that a president has the right as an executive order to tell the states to secure their borders? I think that they, under our Constitution anyway, right? Let's put it this way. There are much more invasive and executive orders that forced states to do certain things, right? Much more invasive, and the states complied. So this doesn't even sound like something that's a big deal. I mean, hey, you can no longer harbor illegal people. It's a legal question, isn't it? You're either a legal citizen or you're not. I can tell you this. I can tell you that I legally have to have a driver's license. Otherwise, I get a huge fine. Why is it I get a fine for not having a driver's license, but a state can actually break the law and harbor and hire illegal citizens? You see the problem here? Or if I want to buy a firearm, there's all these rules. Why do we have to go by the rules and they don't? That's my opinion anyway. Uh-oh, Dr. Savage's comments are not coming through. I think I have links disabled on here, so if you put a link, maybe that's why I got held back. But I do know that our channel is being monitored, and they will not... Oh, we got a guideline strike. Oh, boy. Sorry to hear that. For a prediction video. Yeah, there's a lot of double standards going on in America. Yeah, very specific things that you have to do as an American citizen. And if you don't do that, someone's on you. We have controls in place, you guys. Gosh, even to build a house, there are people monitoring you in certain areas. Now, there aren't a lot of restrictions here, but if you lived in other places, there are all these building requirements. Contractors can be fined for doing certain things. So why do we have to deal with all that red tape? But then all of a sudden, these other people do not. And our government will not enforce things to keep us safe as citizens and to keep our economy intact. And to reserve the benefit system that we paid into for us. Now, I do know that in California, a lot of illegals actually that are working in the fields, I think they pay into Social Security. But then because they don't have a citizenship status, they're never promised that money. So I know there's a kind of a thing. I'm just giving the fair sides of the argument They're being exploited, right? Because you shouldn't have to make them pay into the Social Security system if you can't promise that they're going to be able to draw on that Social Security. So that's not an immigration problem, that's a policy issue. They should never make them pay into it, because that gives them false hope. And then what they do is they dangle the carrot and they never ever approve them for citizenship, even though they're over here working. So what's the answer? Well, I know there are certain things that only a laborer can do in a field. And guess what? I look at it this way. We as Americans, most of my life, I've wasted food. Okay? In other words, you buy a bunch of bananas, and inevitably, not all those bananas get eaten. And I feel like if we were just a little bit more careful about not wasting the produce, then it wouldn't really cost us more for the produce. Because, yeah, it would cost more, but then you're just careful about not wasting it, right? Because everyone says, oh, do you really want to pay that much money for your produce if there's no illegals allowed to work in the fields and we have to pay other people $20 an hour instead of $8 an hour? Well, I would be willing to spend a little bit extra on produce, or guess what? Grow it yourself. So these are just my thoughts on this. Or you have community farms. And if it's going to cost you $6 for a bunch of bananas, banana is a bad example because they don't really grow here. But if it's going to cost you, $6 for an avocado, then guess what? Now all of a sudden it's going to make more sense for an avocado grove in the community to sell those avocados for $3 an avocado, right? And then you can trade with each other. And then all of a sudden, we're back to our normal economy. But see, here's the problem. These trade agreements, who do they benefit? They benefit the controllers. You think they're not getting overrides on these trade agreements? Of course they are. They wouldn't do it just out of the kindness of their heart so that Americans can have produce. Somebody in the middle is making a bunch of money doing that. That's why they're doing it. They're tapping into it. And they can't get overrides and tap into a local economy, can they? I mean, they can, and they're starting to, with all these, restrictions and licensing you have to get to trade in America. Like if you want to certify something organic, now all of a sudden you got the federal government and you're on you're on the radar, and you've got to talk to them, and people come out and examine your property. I mean, I thought this was America. Can't organic just be people in the neighborhood realize that, wow, I just saw that avocado tree go in and that person's not using any pesticides? I don't know, you guys. I'm just talking. So, those are just some of my thoughts, you guys. I love each and every one of you. I'm glad you guys all got to hang out today. It's really fun hanging out with you guys. And I don't really have anything planned for tomorrow yet. We'll see. I might take a day off here, or I may not. I'm not sure yet. I let God lead me, and if something pops up, I'll do a show on it. But I will put links to all this in the pinned comment. I love each and every one of you, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care and be safe.